Welcome to Let Fear Bounce, the podcast that sheds light on the transformative power of overcoming fear. And dogs and coffee will more than likely creep into our conversations. So join me, Kim Langling, the host of Let Fear Bounce, as I chat with folks from around the world who share their inspirational stories and how they've turned their fear into fuel for a brighter future. You're going to hear from folks just like you and me. People who have navigated challenges and unleashed their personal strength to craft a life filled with fulfillment and joy. So are you ready to be uplifted, inspired, and motivated to conquer your own fear and bounce toward a life that you love? I know that I am. So grab your coffee, sit back, relax, and let's get this show started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langling, your host, and I am so pleased that you are spending just a small part of your day with myself and my special guest today, Jon Gagnon. Now, he comes to us from Canada. I always say Canada when I was younger. He comes to us from Canada. He is a stand-up comedian who has been a part of the New York and Burbank comedy festivals. And as a cartoonist and award-winning screenwriter, Jon has a knack for both short, concise, and longer storytelling style jokes. Now, he started comedy as a form of therapy after being attacked in a random act of violence, leaving him in a coma for a short period of time. Well, that's an interesting way to start the journey. By golly, yeah, Jon, absolutely. Welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to this because, I don't think I've ever met an actual comedian before that does it, that does it for a living. So this is kind of exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm happy to be your first.
Yay, me. So, all right. I do want to, that's kind of a little edgy there. You started this comedy part of your life as a form of therapy. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there was a competition in Vancouver called the Yuk Off. Yuk Yuk's is a comedy venue down here, and I wasn't able to work. I was not really psychologically even capable of leaving my house, but I was looking for a reason to get out, and I was working with this great therapist, Dr. Rosenblatt, she's based out of Vancouver now, but from New York. And, she helped me through a lot of the stuff. And when I saw this comedy competition, I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to talk about getting jumped and I'm going to make it funny. And that's going to be therapy for me when the crowd laughs. So I think there were 13 comedians in my round, and I think I placed 11th. Because most of the audience, I didn't know that it takes you a while to create an act. It takes a while to create an act, and years really. And so I just went up and tried to make a joke about getting beat up and left in a coma. And the punchline, there's a company around here called Drake Towing, and Drake's of course a famous Canadian hip hop artist and actor. So my punchline was, as I slipped into a coma, the last thing I could see was the sign that says parking monitored by Drake. And I was like, man, that guy does everything. Singer, songwriter, and parking lot attendant. And the crowd just stared at me because they were like, are you okay? And so I hadn't figured out how to make it funny yet at the time. But what happened is someone in the audience, this guy named Daryl Lennox, who is a blind comedian who had been through a lot of trauma, he was in the audience, and he told me that he couldn't believe that I had the guts to try to tell a joke like that. And then he asked me if I'd be interested in opening for him the next weekend when he was headlining the very club. So that was sort of the beginning of my journey. And since I've been doing it for 9 years, and I've toured all over North America with Daryl as his opening act, up to the point where now I am the headliner for shows locally and regionally in Western Canada, and that's opened the doors for me in the States as well for comedy festivals and that type of stuff.
Oh, awesome! And then the gentleman that he heard you, because obviously you said he was blind, so he heard something,
yeah,
in you and thought, you know what, there's some potential there. I'm going to talk to this young guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And his style was talking about like if ever you go look at Daryl Lennox, who's his album, I think was number one in the US last year. His album talks about a lot of stuff like that because he wasn't always blind. It was a something that happened over time. So he used to make that funny. So when he saw me try to do that, he goes, "Well, here's a guy who can open up for me. Here's a guy who can warm the crowd up to the idea that trauma and pain can be funny."
We've all had trauma of some sort. I've had my fair share of it. And for me anyway, I have, at times a bit of a dark sense of humor.
Yeah,
And it's something my whole family does. And that's what actually gets us through, is laughing through those dark times.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think over the years of doing that dark material, as I mentioned it, I use it as therapy. So over time, those memories don't hurt me anymore. Those memories of like, I don't even really do those jokes anymore because there's nothing left for me to feel on them. And you really want to feel when you're on stage. So now, I've reached a different part of my life. So my comedy is definitely more about that. But at the time, that was what I felt, and that's what I wanted to say. And it really helped me psychologically. So, and in my opinion, I always tell anyone that's going through trauma or going through anything painful, well, for me, the art was stand-up comedy, but it can be painting, it can be writing, it can be singing. Taylor Swift is a perfect example. That's how she gets over all of her breakups, is writing a new a new
All
smash
of them.
song.
Yes.
All 38 of them.
Yeah. She's a busy young lady. Um, so you're at a different season in your life now, and you said that your comedy, your jokes and things have shifted and changed a little bit. What direction do you see that now? Or I guess share what season you're in now.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a wonderful relationship with my partner Emily, who is she's a contemporary ballet dancer, and we've been together for about 9 years as well. So a lot of the material that I'm writing these days derives from our relationship. She's such a great person, and I'm okay. So it's always fun to write from the point of view of of the villain, so to speak. Not that I'm a villain, but uh, so that's been a big part of my writing these days. And then just talking about, I think society has changed a lot over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of movements, a lot of social movements have taken place. Society is trying to autocorrect, and they're correcting wrongly on both sides as a balance. So it's myself, I'm not a very politically fueled person. I've always just thought like just be a good person. Um, so you
I'm
shouldn't
right there with you on that one. Yeah.
right. So when you see these people go on extremes, it's always fun to stand in the middle and just point out how far everyone is going. So I have a lot of fun with that as well.
I was going to say that could just, it's, well, literally you can turn on the TV and you've got material.
Absolutely, yeah. I think everyone wants to do the right thing, but I think that everyone's just a little excited right now as we
That's such a nice way to say everything. Yes, they're just a little excited.
they just they'll settle down. I remember in the early 90s, I mean, I was a young kid then. I think I was only 5 years old. But in the early 90s, I think we had a big autocorrect then as well. And and that's fun to think back on. I mean, I could never make jokes about that, but because it's just too long ago, no one would remember or understand it. But there was a big correcting there in the early 90s that reminds me of today.
So what do you see as your ideal audience?
My ideal audience is probably around a 25 to 55 middle class with that dark sense of humor that you're talking about. Just a little bit, because sometimes I'll say some things and I'll see someone in the front who's very polished, and I just go, "I'm so sorry." This is a joke about someone who jumped. I had a joke about we have two bridges in our city, and there were suicide jumpers on both. And I started off getting empathy from the crowd on how sad the situation is, but then I ended up flipping it to how inconvenient it was for me because there's two bridges, and hopefully we can figure out a way to get them to jump off the same bridge so that I'm not inconvenienced. So we have a good fun time with that. And I find lots of positives, like maybe the two off the same bridge realize that they love each other, and that's a meet cute moment. And they have a child, and then they name that child after the bridge, and they go on to live. And then I go, or worst case scenario, they jump off the same bridge, and I get to go to my appointment on time. So it's a very dark joke, which a lot of people love.
I,
And some people are just like, oh my goodness.
I think it's funny. And I guess, also it would depend. I don't know. I guess it would depend on your mindset at the time that you're hearing it.
Of course. And I think I like to play on that as humans, like we really intend to be nice and we want to be good, but deep down we always have this selfish thought that comes up first that you have to suppress. And I like playing with that idea.
I think those, there's another comedian. Do you know Tom Segura?
Of course, yes, absolutely.
I find him hilarious.
Yeah.
He's awful. Some of the stuff that he says is just awful. And I find myself laughing so hard. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's bringing out that little devil inside Kim.
Yeah.
Everybody has that person, that little voice that you're saying, like the people on the bridge. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
now I'm going to be late. Are you kidding me? The whole bridge is shut down because this person doesn't want to live anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it's dark, but no one, if anyone ever tells you that they've never had a thought like that, I would think that they're lying.
But then there's always that one person in the front of the crowd that so you could just see they're just so sweet. And you're like, I'm sorry. That joke's
You
not
have to
for you.
apologize. Yeah.
And I'm like, the rest of the show might not be for you either, but we'll get you tickets to the next one.
Right. Well, that's a nice way to put this show just might not be for you.
And that's what
And you know
that's what the
what?
arts are.
That's okay too.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's something that actually gets me pretty fired up is when people say, oh, this person's not funny or this musician's not good. I've heard a few times people say like, oh, Kevin Hart's not funny or Hannah Gatsby's not funny. And then I'm like, well, they're selling out full stadiums. So
Right.
obviously they're pretty good at what they do. They're not funny to you. That's your
Right.
opinion, but you're not the end all be all judge of what is or isn't great.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I completely agree. It's the same, as an author, not everybody is going to like what I write. Not
Yeah.
everybody is my reader,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's we don't want everybody to like everything. How boring would the world be?
Yeah, if everyone was the exact same and every
Yeah.
every radio station was just playing the same six songs.
Yeah, right. Well, to me, it was just, the sound that comes to my mind is like Charlie Brown's mom, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah,
And that's all you would hear all day, every day. How boring.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and
We
that's
don't
the
want to
point
be
when
Charlie Brown's mom.
exactly that's the point I make when I go, well, we'll get you tickets to the next week because that's a different voice and maybe you'll like that one.
Very nicely done then. See?
Yeah. For myself, I have a sort of a tribe mentality when it comes to comedy. So like we all have different voices, we all bring different things, but as we're all on the same team of selling the idea of stand-up comedy. So
And I think this is just my opinion, obviously. The world needs more laughter
absolutely, yeah.
because everybody's taking everything way too seriously, or they're twisting it and turning it, whatever it is that they're doing with it, whatever it may be, to whoever it is out there. You've got to just take a deep breath, folks, and smile. You've got to laugh at the absurdity of life.
Absolutely. And how important people think things are is to me is the most absurd thing.
You nailed it right there. You nailed it. How important, yes. So many things that you lose sleep over or put so much energy into. Is it going to matter tomorrow?
Yeah. Like I think there's like a little patch of construction outside my building that's been going on for too long, according to my neighbors. And it ruins their day. And I just think that's so funny that the last 10 seconds of their commute will ruin their day when we're just like we're basically ants on a rock floating through infinite space and there are certain parts of the world that have to walk miles to eat. But no, yes, those 8 seconds. So the laughing at the absurdity is very important because it doesn't take away from what they feel. What they feel is very real. so so
Yes.
that's why you should laugh about it.
Exactly. Yeah, don't let it bring you down. Goodness. There's too many bright spots
Yeah.
throughout the day. And if you keep those blinders that they put on horses, Like the Amish have those blinders on their horses all the time. It's like everybody's walking around with those. There's color out there. Take your blinders off. There's color and goodness and laughter and fun out there.
Yeah, my advice from as a comedian's point of view is go back to the joke where with the bridge. It's like be mad about it, but then make it then laugh about it and then move on. It's okay
And
to
that's the
feel.
key.
Yeah,
Then move on.
and move on because
Don't
it's
let
not
it
that bad.
settle.
It's not that bad.
That's right. Don't let your angst and anger settle on you.
No, don't let it take up your day. Like don't go to sleep angry. Like there's just no point, especially not for most of us. I mean, obviously some people out there have it very tough, and I don't want to take away from those people, but
Yes,
for the most part, we're all right.
that's right. We are. We're all just a little skewed.
It's just a little skewed in our own way.
Just a smidge. And I don't, I freely admit it. And, just like, yeah, well, yeah, I'm a little out there. And I live in my own little realm. I'm the queen of it. And I like my realm. I
And I
like my
like
realm,
that. You're
you
the
know?
queen of your own realm.
That's
That's
right.
that's
Darn
good.
it.
That what that reminds me of is someone told me one time they go, "Oh, if you're the biggest fish in a pond, go to a bigger pond." And I was like, I don't know. What if you're the most middle fish in a pond? Can you go to a smaller pond? Can you go be the king of a small pond? Like, can we go both ways with that metaphor?
That's a good comment right there, actually. I never thought of it either because I've heard that before too. Yeah. Yeah. Why don't I want to be a bigger fish? So I'm going to go to a smaller pond.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be the biggest pond, and I'm gonna be the king or queen of that pond. So I don't
That's
know. It depends what you want. Like, what do you want? Do you want to be average, or do you want to be the king? Like, I don't know.
I'm the queen of my realm, dang
You're
it.
the queen of that pond, right?
That's right. That is right. I like that little metaphor. Yeah, good one. Thanks for sharing that one. So, how did you meet your significant other, a contemporary ballerina, you said?
Yeah, she's a contemporary ballerina. I met her the old-fashioned way, on a dance floor at an Irish pub called the Blarney Stone.
How fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which
So
is funny because I
a
had to.
ballerina and a comedian.
Yeah, exactly. It's and there's for years people were like, you guys should do like a hybrid show, and then we did it, and it was crazy because I didn't know how powerful she was. She's so smart, and so she's like she choreographed the whole thing and then told me which things to do, and right at the end she got me to do this very very dark joke, very dark, um, but I had never really been able to successfully tell that joke. But the way that she had built it up with the dance in between, it had to escalate to something, so it escalated to this thing. And I remember the first time we did it, I just looked at this audience, and people were just crying, and I was like, I had never done that before. And then after the show, people were hugging me, like we had a moment, and that was the first time I'd ever had such a like experience with an audience. So it was really cool. Yeah, dance and ballet and comedy, there is something there.
Well, and dance, it's so emotional.
Yeah,
It, to me, how I
it
view
is. Yeah,
dance, very emotional. If you let yourself fall into it, just like music. That's how I always say, or a good book. And I that's how I always word it. I'm like, oh, that book was so good, I just fell into it. Or that song was just so amazing, I got goosebumps and I just fell into it.
yeah,
you know and it's the same thing, like watching comedians, because I love watching comedians. Dry bar comedy, I've found some great ones on there, on
yeah,
all these different streaming platforms, and you just fall into it because you need that. Comedy, I think, is needed. Comedians are needed, and I think it's an amazing art form that I don't think is recognized enough.
it's on the up. It's on the up and up. I mean, the Golden Globes just announced their first stand-up comedy award this year, so that went to Ricky Gervais. So that's something. It's a step in the
He's
right
another
direction.
one that is brilliant at dark humor.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think they said something like Ricky Gervais, controversial comedian, wins award. And I'm like, if you're not slightly controversial, you're not doing it right. Like
Right.
that's the whole. Who comes in and goes, the light is green, then you go. Like that's not funny.
Right.
Like you can't just state facts. You have to be controversial. You have to be. That's the whole point of comedy. It doesn't have to be like mean spirited controversial, but it has to be unusual, and unexpected.
Most of it I've found, or at least this is my perception, um, those comedians, and more than likely yourself as well, you're not being controversial. What you're making a joke or building a joke about is true things that happen every day in people's lives. They just don't want to admit it.
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
don't
Yeah,
want to, they don't want to look at it in the light of day. And
absolutely.
those types of comedians are bringing that out. And in essence, they're putting a mirror up in front of everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the guys that are deemed controversial are the people that are putting that mirror up against things that we have all decided as a society that we shouldn't say. It's like, well, you shouldn't say that, or you can't say that. And I think the people that put the mirror up to those specific topics, they get deemed controversial, but they're not liars. They're not, typically speaking, they're not liars. I'm not going to speak on behalf of all comedians, but from what I've seen, it's always like seems to be some truth in there.
Yeah, there's always those nuggets of truth in there. And I think that's why I'm drawn to those type of comedians,
Yeah.
because they're in your face. They're in
And
your
they're
face.
honest. Yeah.
Yes, honest and in your face. And I appreciate that actually a
Yeah.
lot. So where do you see your journey going from here?
I mean, I've thought a lot about that exact topic. My old mentor, Daryl, he was always about getting huge and, being the next Kevin Hart and all that stuff. But for me, I think my impact is going to be more community based. I think that I like my life in Vancouver, and I don't necessarily love the idea of going from town to town. I didn't enjoy that hotel experience where you're just going to a new town, making new friends, and then leaving immediately. I thought that was actually quite difficult psychologically. So for me, I think I'd like to build and help make this community bigger and bigger because Vancouver is up and coming in comedy. We've got the Just for Laughs that's starting to come here now for the last 3 or 4 years. And there's no comedy club here because the rent is just incredibly high. We're as high as like Hong Kong for real estate. So trying to figure out how to use my skills to create art spaces where comedy can grow and thrive. And I think I'd like to be a big builder of comedy as I get older.
So you in turn could be a mentor to those coming up then.
I think that'll be something in my future, maybe 10, 15 years from now when I'm in my 50s. I would like to start to mentor the next generation. Absolutely.
So do you have an online presence, or do you do shows online, or
I mean, I have an Instagram. It does okay. I think I have like 10,000 followers, which is, for Canada, that's pretty good. I'll post videos every now and again. My little brother Jay, he records me and then he sends me clips. He goes, "Oh, this one was a good one. This one's a good one." Uh, Personally, I don't know why. I just don't. I have a little bit of trouble with trying to say this is good or you should like this or because we all have different opinions and so the things that blow up for me I'm always like I don't even think that was that great of a joke.
yeah.
And then the stuff I really love I'm like this doesn't even no one even gets it. So I've sort of passed that off to my little brother and he's edited maybe 4 or 5 of my clips and I think 3 of the 5 have done very well on social media, so he takes care of that for me. But again, I think some people are chasing that celebrity or that fame. And I think I would just rather focus on the art itself and what it means to me, and then hope that people like it, but not try the opposite, try to create something that people will like.
Gotcha. You're riding the boat and seeing where it takes you.
Exactly, yeah. And you know what? This year I've been invited to another comedy festival now in Texas, so I'll be going down to Texas and yeah, and those are based on the clips that my little brother's edited, so it's been sort of just organically working out in that sense.
Awesome. No, that's exciting stuff though. That is.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be, I don't know, for me, because I'm the same way with what I do. People are like, oh, you got to push, you got to do this, you got to spend money on ads for this and advertise this. And I'm going, well, no, I don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
The right readers are going to find my stuff at the right time.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works anyway. It's probably not the best business sense, but
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's whatever makes you happy and keeps you sane because, there's a lot of great artists that have chased that. And then when they get there, it's always the same. I've seen that movie 100 times. They get there and then they go, "Oh, happiness doesn't come from this." So, you have to be a little bit more focused on what keeps you happy and what keeps you sane.
exactly. No, I completely agree. What keeps you happy and what keeps you sane? Because if you're not good mentally, you're not good anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been in those dark spots. Sounds like you've been in your own dark spots. They're not fun, and you can't really do a whole lot when you're there.
No.
And so, it's
Although,
so much better to be out in the light. And so, I take my journey as it comes day by day. And it sounds like that's what you do. And I think that's a beautiful thing because then you're getting a chance to enjoy the ride.
absolutely, yeah. And I think over the last few years, I was talking about we've learned a lot and changed a lot of society. I think the biggest thing that's come was the awareness of people who are struggling with mental health. And I think for myself, recognizing that, going to a hotel in a different city every weekend, that that was putting me in a difficult place where I would wake up and I go, well, what do I do today? Like walk around and I guess just go to the dollar store. Like I didn't even know what to do with my days.
Right.
uh, and then people are like, well, that's what you need to do to be a great comedian. And then I was like, well, I don't think I want to be that great comedian then. I think I just want to build locally. So I think it stemmed from being aware of what, makes you happy and what keeps your mental health in a good place.
And I think more people need to, maybe more people need to be more aware of that. They
Yeah.
might, I don't know. Everybody chases their own dream in their own way.
Yeah. And some people love that.
Everybody's on a different journey. Mine is, I always say, I might be going at a turtle's pace, but I'm still going.
Yeah, and that's the one that wins the race in the old folklore. So,
That's right. That's right. That is
and that's
right.
just us. That's our version of us, and we know each other enough to know that. And I have a good friend. His name is Akeem, and he's a wildcat. And he'll phone me from wherever. He'll be like, "I'm in Indianapolis. This is great. I'm here. I'm performing." He goes, "The hotel's got a bidet." He's just so excited, and I
And he
love that for
thrives
him.
in that. He thrives in
Yeah.
that,
And he
apparently.
goes, You should come with me to the next town." And I go, "No, thank you."
And some people do, they do thrive on that.
Yeah,
We're all made different for a reason.
exactly. Yeah.
And there's also a time he probably won't always want to do that.
No,
So the season that he's in right now, he's enjoying it. Good for
he's
him.
loving it.
That's
He's
awesome.
loving
And he gets excited over bidets, and that's awesome
it.
too.
I mean, we all get excited over bidets. I mean,
Well, of
that's
course,
a
because yeah, they're
surprise.
not typical in our homes here. So at least in the United States and Canada. How long have you been doing comedy? You said about 9 years.
About 9 years, but realistically, I mean, my whole life I was a comic strip writer before that. I've made cartoons. I used to do improv comedy, hosting, but stand up specifically, I found that sort of 9 years in, and I really enjoyed that groove that I got into um, doing stand up because of all the therapy it was giving me, the things that I could talk about. As opposed to improv, improv, you got to kind of keep it lighthearted. You have to be like, like, hi everyone, like, how's everybody doing today? Which is fine. But that's its own like you got to put on a fake face, and then sketch. I really like sketch too, but sketch is a really hard form of comedy. Sketch comedy, of course, is like Saturday Night Live, where everyone pretends to be something and there's some sort of a twist. And that one ended up just being too much work for me. Props and costumes, and then you do it, and the audience they just look at you and they're like, "Well, you had time to prepare for this. This should be better." So that's the toughest one, sketch comedy. Uh, you hear it all the time. People are like, "Saturday Night Live used to be funny." You're like, "Okay,
It
well,
used
it's
to
still
be.
funny."
Honestly, for me, my perception of it, it is not funny at all anymore and has not been for a good 20 years.
You're exactly what I'm talking about. But if you were the age of the performers, you would get their humor. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
just not.
So back in the day when Saturday Night Live was relatively newer, that was my time.
That's
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought
Which
it was absolutely hilarious.
I know, but you know what's the fun part is you go back and you look at those old clips and you're like, nah, it's the same. It's the same. Like I watch the old Bill Murray, Chevy Chase days all the time, and yeah, it's the same. It's just sketch comedy. They're just talking about what's going on in society. But that's the toughest one. And when I decided to try stand up, I was like, oh, this is unique. This is just a microphone and you. There's no props, no stage, no sound effects, nothing. You just it's so raw. And then I was like, oh, this is the version of comedy that I like to do.
Do you ever see, now you said that you've written, or do you continue to write a comic strip?
I did a couple cartoons. So I had a comic strip called Stickman cartoon, which was in my town of Edmonton's newspaper. I did that for 2 years, and then a few years later during COVID, we couldn't do anything, and so after like a week, I was like, well, I got to do something. So I made 2 episodes of the cartoon, and it was that based off that character, Stickman, who's just a normal person going through society as it changes. And it was just so fun to do during COVID because no one knew how to react to it at that point. I think a lot of people were like just shook by everything that was happening. So it was fun to make jokes about that.
Right. Fear. It was fear.
It was a lot of fear. My character
Yes.
loved that there was no traffic when he was driving, and he was finding all the like silver linings.
Right. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Because fear was trying to be force fed to us. And I was one of the people that said, no, thank you. I don't want any.
Yeah. But yeah, at the same time, it's like I remember thinking like, okay, but I still have to be respectful of those who are fearful because fear is such a powerful tool. I didn't want to be like, oh, you're sheep or whatever or anything like that because it's not really fair to. But I remember I had this joke in stand up that where I kept saying, no offense, no offense, no offense. But
Yeah.
if you, and again, no offense, but if you are very emotional about COVID, no offense, nothing bad has ever happened to you before.
Right.
And about 30% of the crowd would just chuckle, and the
Yeah.
other 60 would be like, that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fear is pretty darn powerful. I found that the older folks, that's where the fear landed on the most.
Yeah.
Like
I
my
mean,
mother was very fearful. She's, 81. My aunt, late 70s, she was very fearful. And it was real for
yeah.
them. They were but for me, I was like, no, I'm not letting that land. And I'm not taking what they're trying to feed me, you know.
Yeah, I think it was the
Um
I think it was more the 22-year-olds who were fearful, where you're like, well,
it was interesting, wasn't it? It was a very interesting time.
yeah, well,
And
we'll just leave it at that.
still is to be a matter, to put it out there, still is pretty darn interesting. And at the same time, though, everyone I've talked to, there was also good came out of it.
Right,
So many people lost their jobs, but then started doing their own thing and they're thriving.
right, yeah,
Things like that. It was just such a mix of good and bad,
absolutely.
Um, but it was, interesting to say that that's a big, big part of history that we were a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of reminds me of like when a forest fire burns down and then the soil becomes very fertile and then new growth comes from it. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah, no, good visual. Good visual. So with and I want to get back to my original thought. You write, you wrote or still write every once in a while your cartoon strip. Have you ever thought of taking your writing in a different direction, like into a book or a short ebook or something like that?
I have definitely thought about it. I was at Just for Laughs in Montreal recently, and I was hanging out with a comedy club owner. I won't say their name, but they are putting together a streaming service through their comedy club. And they said, "Oh, you're a writer. Could you write us a script, a TV show script?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I could probably do that." And they're like, "Well, what would you do?" And for whatever reason, what popped in my mind, I just said it. You know how life can be serendipitous. It just that idea just was in my mind, and I threw it at them. And they said, "That's incredible." And then he looked at his partner and he goes, "Has anyone ever written that before?" And he goes, "No." And then they go, "Well, why not?" And they go, "I don't know." So they go, "Can you write that for us?" So over the last couple months, I've been putting together a pilot for for this streaming service. So we'll see what comes from it.
Well, see, now look at where this whole journey of being a comedian has taken you then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just go along for the ride. I try not to
Yeah.
force things, and yeah.
That's how I just say, strap yourself in, buckle up, Buttercup, because it might be a bumpy ride, but it's still going to be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know who got me to go out there is my buddy Akeem, who loves the bidets. He was like,
The
"You have
the
to
bidet
come.
loving guy, yeah.
You have to come to Montreal." He kept saying that. You have to come. And I was like, "All right, I'll come." So being friends with him was my serendipitous moment.
Yeah. Sounds like he's that little nudge that you need every once in a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
we all
And
need
I've
a
written
friend
him
like that in our lives. We all need a friend like that.
one wild child.
That's right. That is right. Well, this has been so fun. So fun, Jon. I really appreciate you coming on with me and sharing your journey a little bit with the listeners. Now, I ask everybody, well, there are two things here. First off, share with everybody where they can find out more about you.
My Instagram is Jon Jon Gagnon Gagnon comedy. So I'll post all my stuff on there, all my videos and upcoming shows. And that's pretty much it. That's all I got for advertising.
And you've got a website?
I've got a website, yeah, and it's got upcoming shows in there too. But that's more because I'm a Canadian, so I have to work in Canada. The only time I can go to the States is for festivals. So I'll be in Paris, Texas, the second best Paris I've heard.
Yeah, right.
But then I'll be checking out Austin and Dallas just to see what their scene is like. So I'll just be popping in and seeing if I can get some spots over there, which is they have to be unpaid, right? So otherwise it's illegal because I'm an alien technically.
Oh, right. You're a foreigner.
I'm a foreigner, that's right.
Good luck with all of that. I'm sure that will be fun.
Thank you.
And then I also always ask all of my guests to toss out a nugget of hope for my listeners. So, what would your nugget of hope be that the listeners can tuck away and carry with them for the rest of the day?
Well, I feel like this conversation just kind of created that nugget, and that is, be open. I don't know what higher power exists, whether it's the universe or Buddha or God or whatever it is, but it seems like when things start working out and you just go with the flow, things really tend to go your way. So that's maybe the advice that I think I've learned through just talking with you just now.
Just relax into the journey.
Just relax into the journey. Everything will be all right. Hopefully.
Hopefully. That's your little nugget of hope. Hopefully. I think it will. You have to have the power of positive thinking. There is something to that.
I like that.
There is something to that. Well, Jon, thank you once again. This has been a true pleasure. I appreciate you, taking part of your day to spend it with me and my listeners on Let Fear Bounce. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and I'll have a great rest of my morning.
All right. Thank you. And everybody out there listening, this is Kim Langling, your host of Let Fear Bounce. Thanks so much for spending just a small part of your day with myself and my guest today, Jon. Everybody out there, be well, stay well, and be blessed. Thanks so much for joining me on Let Fear Bounce this week. New episodes upload each Wednesday, folks, so be sure that you subscribe on one of your favorite platforms that you listen on. Also, we're on YouTube, so hop on over to YouTube, folks, and subscribe there. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you. You are amazing. Have a beautiful day. Everybody be well, stay well, and be blessed.